Someone outmaneuvered you recently. You felt it happening in real time, but couldn't stop it, not because they were smarter, not because they had more resources or more skill, but because they were thinking 3 moves ahead while you were still reacting to the first one. You walked away from that interaction confused, maybe angry, probably telling yourself a story about why it wasn't your fault. But somewhere underneath that story, the truth was sitting quietly. They saw the board. You were still looking at the pieces. Most people operate on a single layer. They respond to what is said, not what is meant. They react to what is visible, not what is being constructed beneath the surface. They engage with the present moment of an interaction while the person across from them is already engineering the outcome. 3 exchanges from now. This is not genius. It is not some rare gift. It is simply the result of one practice, the discipline of thinking further than your instinct tells you to. Machiavelli called it the vision of the prince, the ability to see terrain that others cannot see yet, to identify threats before they materialize, to recognize opportunity in what looks to everyone else like ordinary circumstance. He observed that men who were consistently outmaneuvered shared one trait: they were always surprised, and the man who is always surprised has never learned to look. Here is the uncomfortable truth about most people in competition, in relationships, in any dynamic where something real is at stake. They are playing defense without knowing it. They are responding, justifying, explaining, reacting, adjusting. They believe they are engaging. What they are actually doing is allowing someone else to set the frame of every interaction and then scrambling to operate within it. The frame is the game, and the man who sets the frame has already won before the first word is spoken. You have been in rooms where this happened. A conversation started, and before you fully understood what was being discussed, the terms had already been established. The assumptions baked into the opening question already contained the conclusion someone wanted you to reach. You answered the question as asked. You argued within the frame as given. And by doing so, you confirmed the architecture someone else had built. You played the game on their board, and then wondered why you kept losing. Outthinking is not about being cleverer in the moment. It is about arriving at the moment having already done work that the other person has not done. It is preparation that looks like instinct. It is clarity about your own position, your own non-negotiables, your own desired outcome, so precise and so settled that you cannot be repositioned by pressure, by flattery, or by the sudden introduction of emotional stakes designed to cloud your thinking. The man who has not done that internal work arrives at every important interaction vulnerable. He can be moved because he doesn't know exactly where he stands. He can be confused because he hasn't already resolved the key questions for himself. He can be manipulated through his uncertainty because his uncertainty is visible to anyone who knows how to look for it. Machiavelli wrote that fortune favors the bold, but he was precise about what bold meant. It did not mean reckless. It did not mean loud or aggressive or impulsive. Bold, in his framework, meant decisive, the willingness to commit to a position and hold it while others were still wavering. The man who decides quickly and holds firmly creates a gravitational effect in every interaction. Others begin to orbit his certainty because their own uncertainty needs something solid to organize around. He does not demand this. He does not perform it. He simply knows what he thinks, says what he means, and does not revise it under social pressure. You watched someone do this, held a position in a meeting or a negotiation or a personal conversation while everyone around them pushed back and simply waited, not defensively, not rigidly, just settled. And gradually, almost without anyone acknowledging it, the room moved toward them, not because they were right, because they were certain. And certainty, in a room full of people managing their uncertainty, reads as authority. Now understand what outsmarting actually requires. Most people think it means being more intelligent. It does not. It means having more information about the real dynamics of a situation than the people you are navigating. Information about what people actually want, not what they say they want. Information about what they fear, not what they display. Information about the gap between the position they hold publicly and the position they would accept privately. That information is available in every interaction. It is in the reaction speed, the body language, the topics someone avoids, the questions they ask too eagerly, the reassurances they seek too frequently. Most people are broadcasting their interior state constantly. The man who has learned to read that broadcast holds a permanent informational advantage in every room he enters. He knows more about the people around him than they know about themselves. And that knowledge, used with precision, is the quietest and most complete form of power that exists. If this perspective is opening your eyes, consider subscribing. Psychology Decode uncovers patterns most people never see. Now the third element, outlasting. This is where most people fail even when they have outthought and outsmarted. They cannot sustain the position. They grow impatient. They need resolution too quickly. They misread a pause in the dynamic as defeat and make concessions that were never required. They cannot tolerate the extended discomfort of a situation that has not yet resolved, and so they resolve it prematurely on terms that don't serve them. Machiavelli observed that time is the greatest weapon available to the patient man, not because waiting is passive, but because most people cannot hold a strategic position under extended pressure without leaking, without their anxiety surfacing, without their need for resolution driving them to move before they should. The man who can genuinely wait, who can hold his position through silence and uncertainty and the discomfort of an unresolved dynamic, will almost always outlast the man who cannot. Think about a negotiation that stretched over days or weeks. The first person to break the silence lost ground, not because silence was a tactic they were deploying consciously, but because the silence was genuinely more comfortable for one person than the other. The person for whom it was uncomfortable moved. The person for whom it was neutral or even useful held. The outcome was decided not by intelligence or preparation, but by tolerance for tension. That tolerance is buildable. It is not a fixed trait. It is a practiced capacity. Every time you hold a position under pressure and don't move, you expand it. Every time you sit with an unresolved situation without rushing to close it, you develop it. And over time, the man who has developed genuine tolerance for tension becomes essentially unmanipulable through it, because the primary mechanism for moving most people is the manufactured discomfort of an unresolved dynamic. There is a layer beneath all three of these that Machiavelli returned to repeatedly across his writing. The man who outthinks, outsmarts, and outlasts his opposition consistently is not doing so through tactics alone. He is doing so because he has a longer time horizon than the people around him. He is not optimizing for this interaction. He is optimizing for the position he will hold 3 months from now, 1 year from now, 5 years from now. And that longer horizon changes every decision he makes in the present. The man playing a short game will always sacrifice long-term position for short-term comfort. He needs to win the argument today. He needs to feel validated in this conversation. He needs the approval of this room right now. And in pursuing those immediate emotional returns, he consistently trades away the structural advantages he would have accumulated through patience, restraint, and the willingness to move slowly toward something real. The man playing the long game looks different in individual interactions. He sometimes appears to lose. He sometimes appears unbothered when others expect him to be engaged. He sometimes makes concessions that look like weakness. But across time, across the full arc of a dynamic that others were only seeing one exchange at a time, his position accumulates, his authority deepens. His network of obligations, his reputation for precision, his track record of following through without fanfare, these compound in ways that no single tactical victory ever could. Machiavelli's power tactics were never about the clever move in the moment. They were always about building a position that made clever moves unnecessary. The man whose reputation precedes him does not need to demonstrate capability in every room. The man whose history speaks for itself does not need to explain his decisions to people who question them. The man who has outlasted everyone who has ever underestimated him no longer needs to respond to underestimation at all. In the end, the three elements collapse into one. The man who outthinks does so because he sees clearly. The man who outsmarts does so because he reads accurately. The man who outlasts does so because he is genuinely unbothered by timelines that would destabilize someone who needs outcomes to arrive on an emotionally comfortable schedule. He is not waiting anxiously, he is moving deliberately. There is a difference between those two states that most people never learn to feel, let alone inhabit. The question worth sitting with tonight is not whether you are smart enough to outthink someone. It is not whether you have enough information to outsmart them. It is whether you have built enough internal stability to outlast them. Because in the long game, the final variable is never intelligence. It is always endurance. And endurance is not about toughness or force or gritted teeth. It is about being so settled in your direction that the discomfort of the journey simply does not move you. Have you ever watched someone lose a position they should have held simply because they could not wait one more day? And have you noticed that when you trace that loss back to its origin, it almost never started with a tactical mistake? It started with a feeling, with impatience, with the quiet, unbearable weight of a dynamic that had not yet resolved. That feeling is where the real battle is fought. And the man who has learned to sit inside that feeling without flinching has already won most of the games he will ever need to play.